All right, back with part 2, formula time. And there's the big long formula. There's some parts here that we recognize. Remember, A is the amount at the end. I is the interest rate per period. Same thing as in the compound interest formula. N is the number of interest periods. Or we could say just the number of payments because this is a regular payment. Of payments. And R is the regular payment or the regular investment. That's the part that's new in this formula that we haven't seen before. So here we go. Here's the formula. I'm going to write her all down. And start filling in stuff. Well, what do I got? I got the question here. Where was it? The interest rate was 8%. $300 was the regular payment. Regular payment was $300. Interest rate was 8%, but it's compounded semi-annually, so I got an interest rate per period divided by 2. The number of periods was 3 years, but twice a year, and that's, again, this is because it was semi-annually. And the amount at the end is what I want to find. So R is 300. I was 4% there, 0.04. So I go 1 plus 0.04. N is 6 minus 1 all over I is 0.04. Okay? And, you know, this isn't easy to put into the calculator, but it's not that bad either. This is the built-in calculator. 300 times outside bracket here. Notice this inside bracket, this case, we don't really need it. I'm going to put it in there anyway, just so I can show you. We put it in exactly like it appears. 1.04 n bracket to the exponent 6 minus 1. See, it did that calculation for me. Minus 1. And then there's that n bracket. That bracket there is this bracket here. And then divided by 0.04 equals 1989.89. What do we get before? We got 1989.90. So what happened to the other penny? Well, it was because of rounding, right? Well, where do we do all the rounding? We did all the rounding in this table, which is more accurate. This formula, which is faster. Well, look, that or that, which is faster, right? This is a little bit nicer, isn't it? Now, the formula is complicated, and it's difficult to use and difficult to put in the calculator, but we'll practice. Therefore, again, FERD will have the same amount. Okay, example 3. Ferdette invests $200 quarterly for 2 years at 3% compounded quarterly. Use a table and a formula. So we're going to do both. Now, how much will she have at the end? Well, let's set it up. Okay, so payment. What were the table? Payment, start, balance, interest, deposit, end balance. We can do this. Start, and then we had interest, and then we had deposit, and then we had end balance. Well, how many rows is this table going to have? Well, 2 years, but quarterly means 4 times a year. We're going to have 8 rows. Wow. 8 rows. Wow. 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 So at the start we got 0, no interest, but the deposit is $200 uh, every every 4 months, or every 3 months is quarterly, 4 times a year. 200 at the end, and then that becomes the new starting balance. The interest, and I don't got a lot of room in here, so I'm going to sort of do this calculation off of the side. The interest is $200 was at the start. The rate was 3%, and for a quarter year, right? Three months is a quarter year, and that gives me $1.50, a whole $1.50 interest. But I'm going to put another $200 in there, and that gives me 401.50, and then that becomes the new starting amount. And then now we're off to the races. Now it's the same old thing. So here, 401.50 times 0.03 times 1/4 is $3.01. $200 deposit. I add those across. I get 604.51, and then you know what? I'm not going to do all of them. Here's the table. You can pause it and fill in your table. Okay. And do we have to do it this way in the homework? Yes, you have to do it this way in the homework. How much will she have at the end was 1642.64. Whoops. I am going to go ... here, just so we can keep going. 1642.64. And that's A. And it says, and use a formula. So here, I'm going to change color. Let's do the formula as well. You got this formula memorized? Remember, for the exam, you're going to have a formula sheet. So you're going to write this formula right on your formula sheet. For now, it's not that bad. You're just copying it off of me, and you'll be surprised how quickly you'll know it and love it. Okay, so what are these values? A, the amount at the end, is what we want to find. The regular payment was $200. The interest rate per period, well, it was 3% compounded quarterly. So 3% compounded quarterly. Well, 3% compounded quarterly is 0.0075. The number of interest period was 2 years, but 4 payments. That's 8 altogether. There's our 8 rows. But now I can just fire this into a calculator. And it is a bit difficult to put this into a calculator, but you can do it. You need to practice. See if you can get this. And I got 1642.64. And that's the total, right? Therefore, is it Fredette? Yeah, Fredette will have 1642.64. How much of that is interest? Well, you see a problem here, right? Because the formula is awesome, wicked fast, and not that difficult to use, but to get the amount of interest, we added up this column. Now, we could add up this column, sure, add up those numbers, but you know, more and more we're going to want to use this formula because it's so much faster and easier. So how are we going to get this? Well, remember, of that 1642.64, a lot of it is her payments, right? Her payments were $200 a payment, but for 8 payments. So I can get the interest is the amount at the end, subtract the payments that you made. So we got 1642.64, but we had 8 payments of $200. You fire that into a calculator, and you can see that she made a whopping, yes, that's a whopping $42.64. not he, she earned $42.64 interest. And yes, you have to do the table when it asks you to do the table. But if you like the formula, well, you're not alone. Me too. And there's the table again. You can pause that if you'd like to copy that. But otherwise, stay tuned.